this computer. So official when it announces that.
So
it is very.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Amy Forrest. I'm a consultant with the Jackson Collaborative Network, and I'm joined by Sarah Williams, also my esteemed colleague.
I was say I'm not esteemed today.
You're esteemed
Every
today.
other time you introduce me, I'm esteemed.
It's just a fun way to introduce people. We're all esteemed.
We are.
So thanks for joining today. Today is our second affinity group meeting around building trust between providers and community members. We're excited to get going on this. We'll do a quick introductions. And if you are joining from a computer that you don't normally receive email on, feel free to put your organization and email in the chat so that we can follow up afterwards. We'll just go through and do quick introductions.
My name is Nicole Baker. I'm the Aging Adult Services Manager at Region 2 Area Agency on Aging.
Nicole.
I'm Jen Gansel. Currently the parent liaison for the Great Start Collaborative Jackson County, and I work with the trusted advisors here in the community.
Thanks, Jen.
Hi, I'm Tracy. Oh, can you hear me? Good. Yep. Hi, I'm Tracy. I take care of communications and community engagement within the network.
Hi, everyone. Sherry Butters, manager with the Jackson Collaborative Network. I am just joining as an observer today. This is the first time my schedule actually was free to attend, so I'm interested to see the affinity groups in action.
Oh, it's going to be lots of action today.
It'll be good. Well, thanks all for coming. As Amy said, we had, you never know, right? Like with summers and schedules and like who can come when. And I know we had some people that were unable to come. They emailed this morning, but we have found every meeting valuable. So hopefully you find the same. And as Amy said, this will be recorded. So people that are not able to attend will be able to watch this later. I was going to make some joke about like YouTube stars. Every meeting, Amy and I have, we're like, we're YouTube stars now.
We're going to be Insta famous, but it's not Insta.
But we're hoping that this work builds on each other, right? Like we're new to building it and modeling it after some other affinity groups that have already been successful and growing. But the idea between the idea with these groups is that they build from meeting to meeting, so that like meeting one is like, let's come together and like talk about it, and then we bring our strategies together, and then like how do we work stronger to, and we'll talk more about like what that looks like step by step. But yeah, hopefully we regardless of the group size, I think it will be a great conversation, and we'll figure out how to move forward together.
Yep. So we're going to do a quick overview for those of you who have joined us for the past either collaborative conversation or the first affinity group meeting. Just a little description of what the intent is with these meetings. So the affinity groups, we're hoping to build capacity, support conversation, and move to action. That's the big thing. We're really excited about bringing strategies to the table and make them actionable and affect change in our community, with the emphasis on those experiencing and equitable outcomes. We all know that those that are closest to the problem are the really ones that we're looking to target. We're also focusing on how to partner with community members, with different, each of you with different organizations and people that are doing both with lived experiencing and doing the work around moving to action, better understanding the deeper root causes, and then exploring strategies that we can implement to begin to address it. We are the facilitators for these affinity groups. They're really your groups. We're here to help support the activities, make connections, help educate, support, share resources, technical assistance. But these groups are really about the folks that are in the community doing the implementing the strategies and doing the action and moving to action. So that's a little overview of the group. And moving forward, we're hoping for participant goals that you're able to gain necessarily skills, gain knowledge. We're going to breeze through these because we've done them so many times. Really enhance connections, both with community members and with different organizations in the community. Want to build relationships with folks, really elevate community power, making sure that we understand what they're experiencing and understand that they know what they need and what matters most to their health and well-being. And track and measuring progress. So we're going to implement these strategies, but we want to make sure that we're doing meaningful tracking and measurements so that we can move the needle on some of the community issues that we're experiencing. Anything I missed on there, Sarah?
It's great. Good summary.
Breezed through that. Should have slowed down, but I want to make sure that we get through it.
Yeah, so this is something that we briefly touched on in our meeting number 1. And I know like when you create a group, I shouldn't assume that all of us have been in groups before, but developing norms for a group and the importance of that so that, right, like they're, again, I was saying it's probably written on the slide, but really it's like an agreed upon set of things that we all agree to abide by, and we all decide that this is the thing that we're all going to co-sign and say, yes, this is how I'd like to move forward in the group. So Amy was found this great example, and we kind of find that, right, that like finding a thing that could be a good starting point and then reacting to it is a good place versus just kind of starting from total scratch. So these are some ideas of group norms. Handily, they all start with the letter P. I'm not sure if we'll do all of that moving forward. I'll always start with something with the letter P, but we thought that this was like a good starting point, and we're hoping to get your thoughts on what is included and also maybe what is missing. So here we have pausing, before responding or asking a question. Paraphrasing, I had to like kind of look this one up a little bit. It's kind of a social worky thought, but around like when you're hearing what someone is saying, paraphrasing is really around like what I'm hearing you say is this thing, and really almost has like a positive intent piece. It's really like objective versus like assuming what they might be saying. Posing questions is kind of obvious around like if something is not clear, and also to explore ideas, especially with each other, right? Because part of the intent of this group or the affinity groups is to build connections with each other. Like our ideal world is that you all come to these meetings and develop connections that don't involve us, that like you're off together working as well, right? So we love the posing questions, putting ideas on the table. And really that's the heart of meaningful dialogue and discussion, right? So like, what about this idea? Amy and I talk about this all the time, how we think that like multiple brains are better than just one at the table. And really she'll say something, I'll be like, oh my gosh, that makes me think about this thing. And maybe Jen has an idea, and like we did this thing, and then Nicole could say, yes, but like we tried that with, parents and that didn't work or whatever. But like this thought of like just putting ideas out there and really what that could spark between everyone. Providing data. If you are new to either me or Amy or the network, you'll know that we love data, and also all kinds of, right? Like as we track and measure progress, I think it will be great. Obviously data is important, but also as we start strategies, as we start talking about what you're doing in the community, we will have a heavy discussion around why data is so important around strategies or whatever you're doing. And then like what kind of data is being used, what kind of data is missing. And also we're hoping for transparency. You might not have everything like checked off and figured out, but like really this is the part where we hope that honesty and transparency, and Amy and I will always provide that too. It will never be a grading scale. You'll never get, like we want to be thought partners with you and how we do this work together. Paying attention to self and others is meaningful dialogue and discussion. Just being aware of how things are said, and then presuming positive intention, kind of assuming that people have good intent, even if maybe it doesn't land with you well. And making sure I didn't miss any of the notes. Clarifying the intent of others saves an incredible amount of time. So that, and then with the link there is, if you would like more information on why group norms and shared values are essential, we put that there. But just wondering if you have any thoughts on the draft. This is just kind of a starting point, and also if you have like, actually, maybe you don't love one of these ideas, or maybe something is missing and you'd like to add it.
To understand pausing, is that just a little bit more about taking a moment before you respond, question something, clarify something, just taking a moment to just check, just check, put yourself in check? Because I know a lot of times things that we're trying to tackle become a little frustrating, right? Big when you feel like you're talking in circles or your ideas aren't landing on someone, like you put it, Sarah. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're quick to respond, and those are sometimes. So just that I'm understanding, pausing is just putting yourself in check before you respond and react.
I think that's a good summary, and it's tough too, because I've been in a part of groups where they're like step up, step back, which is like kind of a traditional one where like taking up space. But I think you're right, Jen, when it comes to like especially if you have differing opinions of things, or like if you did an intervention or a strategy and it was like really successful, and someone else is like, I did this thing and it's horrible and no one should ever do it, right? Like there's a minute of like, I'm gonna take 10 seconds before I like, so I think it is like a best practice piece. It certainly is not like be quiet and like don't speak up, but I do think that it kind of this piece around like, how do I want to say this, or how do I, for me personally, it's more like, well, is what I'm saying fact, or like my emotions coming up too? I don't know, Amy, do you have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I think you guys covered it. It really is just taking that minute to take the 10-second break to make sure that what you're saying is, appropriate, that it is not going to be offensive, that you're thinking it through. Yeah. So, I mean, certainly we'll get into like rich discussions and banter and things like that, but that pause just is like, okay, think about who's in the room, think about what's appropriate, think about, how can I phrase this that it is expressing what I want to say versus emotion, So yeah, I think it's right about it. Any other thoughts on what we might be missing, or what is included that we don't want? And again, these are just guidelines. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think paraphrasing is good. I don't know if anyone's taken high reliability training, but that's kind of part of that. And what that's doing is that's kind of reinforcing the fact that you're hearing what that person is communicating and you're understanding the same thing. So there's no question. So there's clarity for it. So.
Yep.
I think it's great. I especially love the presuming positive intention. I think especially when we're talking about what could be maybe hot button topics, it's important to, think about that before reacting. So I'm glad to see that in there.
And that's also good with the different kind of language that we use. I know that language is changing, and words are important. And so sometimes we say a word without, that kind of, we'll put it out there. And if someone takes offense, they can be like, you know what, that might not be appropriate. Let's use this word. And it's like, okay. But before we make corrections, we assume that they, that wasn't intended to be negative. So I think that's helpful. All right. So that's out there. Feel free to give input and feedback on that. Excuse me, as we move forward. We don't want to spend too much time, but it's always important when we're starting a group to kind of develop some of these norms. Okay. Don't you guys love this slide so much?
I know this slide very well. Soon, all of our people will know this slide, like the back of their hands. So this is our 14 root causes. This is these are the root causes that we gather around for affinity groups. This is these are the root causes that we not bucket the work, but this is how we're gathering now. And just as a quick reminder, we have learning convenings that we've talked a lot about root causes and how the network and how the community came to these, and how all of the things were sorted and themed. And we also have learning convenings around like the action planning process and really talking a lot about it. So we won't spend a lot of time here today, but this is just a reminder that all of the work that we will do and will gather around will be around these root causes, and also that your work might touch one or more, should. If you're in this group, hopefully your work can be categorized in one or more of these, and that it might be messy and also hard to like just pull it out, right, into one root cause. Likely, if you're working on trust in the community, it could also be service systems are hard to navigate. It could also be people don't know about it, you know. So anyway, the root causes are important to our work, how we organize the work, and also probably not super cut and dry, which is fine because Amy and I are good at messy conversations. But just a reminder of where we kind of put everything. And then when we talk to people about strategies, we'll say, oh, well, like what root cause does that fall into? And this is what we're referencing.
Now we get to get into the work. Okay, and stop share for a minute and bring up our Padlet. Sarah, do you want to pop that in the chat? Do you have that handy or?
I do. I will have it handy in 2 seconds. All right. So I just put the link to the Padlet in the chat, and I don't recall if everyone on the call has done Padlet with us or with other people before, but essentially it is a virtual Post-it note board or a whiteboard, and it is anonymous also, and we can see it in real time. I did put a filter on profanity this time. Last time I forgot about that, and we had some people test it out. But this time I did. So hopefully you're not doing any strategies that involve profanity. But if you double click, if you have clicked on the link and then you just double click anywhere on the screen, I should say this, I've also done this before. Amy is sharing screen, so you will have to go off of sharing screen and go to the actual Padlet link. I tried this, I'm like, why won't this work?
Because you were on my
Because I'm
screen.
watching your screen. Yeah. But you can double click anywhere on the screen and a box will pop up for you to add a strategy that you're working on regarding building trust. And this will be where we start. And it is a good place to gather things, and then we will work together to make them more formalized or like in a grid, or how we can do it together. So
we talked a little bit before this meeting. We've hopefully got some of the emails that we're reminding folks that what we really are hoping for is that you'll bring what you're working on in your organization to the table, right? So this is that kind of shift in the way we do meetings. Often people used to come to meetings and get that little nugget or tidbit and go back to the organization. Well, we're hoping those nuggets and tidbits come from you all. And really, I mean, for this one, obviously it's around building trust. So we're going to dig into what is your organization doing, or what strategies do you have in place? And again, we use strategies, but they may not be filtered out. They may not be concrete. But what are those actions that you're taking in your organization that will improve on trust between community members and providers? And this group has, we've had a lot of conversation about trust and what that root cause means. And the root cause is written about community members and providers, but it could be between, providers, or it could be between organizations, or so, I mean, we're going to keep it a little loose to begin with. And then as we find out what rises as a priority, we can hone in on that. But so we want to know, and again, these don't have to be fleshed out. We'll talk a little bit further in there about how we can flesh things out or make them a little stronger, or make sure we're understanding those deeper root causes around the strategies. But yeah, so, and again, it's live, so we are not judging if things are spelling wrong and they're backspacing and all that kind of things. Don't let that prohibit you from really kind of getting in and writing things. But
another thing that I wanted to point out is because Amy and I were talking about this, and that like it's very possible that people who are a part of this group like likely you're working on things in the community regarding trust, or maybe you want to start doing that. And maybe it's possible you don't have a strategy that's like flushed out or figured out, but that you see that there's a trust problem and that you are in a position to do something or you want to do something. So this is the right place for you. Also, to me, there's a period. So, I mean, I can also enter things as examples, right? Like maybe I'm working in a mental health provider's office, and I've heard that like maybe I have 3 clients who are maybe I have 3 clients that are Black, and they've told me they don't trust me as much as if they had a Black mental health provider. And so I know, like, I've heard anecdotal things that that they don't trust me, but maybe I need to like dig for more data. So like maybe I have a starting point and I want to work on trust, but I actually like need to take more steps. So this is really just a conversation piece. It could be you have strategies that are like working and we're here to help you do that. And also maybe you just have some ideas, or maybe your organization hasn't done anything and you want to change that too. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I also like feel free to get into a little bit more detail on these if it's possible. So I'd love to hear about the things that are going on. And I know we have partner profiles where folks talked about what they're working on, but we're hoping to get a little bit more detailed in like what is the strategy, right? So we need to understand this, or we know that we need to talk to like, and I'm going to call somebody out and I apologize, but talking with parents about what and how are you approaching that differently, and how is that improving trust between providers. So let's try to get in feel free to unmute, right? So that we can go back and explain things a little bit, but we really want to get detailed. And again, we don't have to have it right, but more specific. We'll get into it a little bit further too. But if anyone wants to take a minute and kind of like, so establishing credibility, I love that because that's super important and that will improve trust, right? So, but is there something more specific that you're doing in your organization that will move that needle? So we have lots of ideas and lots of concepts of this will change the world, which we're all going to change the world, baby steps. But like, how is it something that you're doing or can do? And how can we get more specific on how and why? Jen, did you unmute? Are you going to share?
I don't know that I've ever muted, Amy. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's all good. I was just making sure that I'm attending.
I was thinking because it's a lot to try to put the detail and the thought on a sticky note.
It is.
So, but I was just thinking about some of the work that we're doing to try and help organizations even be able to identify what it is that's making them untrustworthy in the eyes of the community. So that when I mentioned, I added one about helping to close the loop, that feedback loop, because when someone sees that they offered feedback, that feedback was taken, actually addressed, changes were made, and they actually saw the result of their feedback. I get that with parents, you know what I mean, in an atmosphere of school and transitions from preschool to kindergarten. I see that in the work with the trusted advisors. I mean, there's an awesome story with United Way and somebody who had trouble there, and they went to Greg Hardrick about it, and then we went to United Way, and they don't hesitate to let us share that because they appreciate the story and the learning from it as well. But that gentleman found his way back to Greg with an appreciation 4 months later, because he saw the effect of his comments and concerns. So, I mean, that's huge.
Huge. The closed loop is huge. And I think,
huge.
Yeah, it's interesting, Jen, because I think you're in a unique position because while many organizations are instituting strategies, like they're, doing specific things, you are really the ears on the ground, right? So you have that unique position where you're hearing the struggles and barriers, and you can be that kind of facilitator to say, this is what I'm hearing, this is what folks are encountering. And then we can take some of that data and move into the organizations to say, listen, this practice or this policy is preventing people from achieving A, B, or C. So it's interesting. While we're going to push organizations to change strategies, and you may have things that you know are thinking, you're really the ears on the ground. So you're going to be, I think, really valuable in this group where the feedback that you get and things that you get. And yes, you can do things like closing loops, that building trust. So much of what you do will build trust. But as far as organizational strategies, you're going to be the ears on the ground that can say, hey, we're hearing that, you know, and we're hoping people, these are the connections and relationships that are going to be so valuable. Because when you're making a relationship with the organization A, and you can say, I can tell you from, you know, from the interactions we've had from community members, these are the barriers that you have in your organizations, and how can we fix that? And then you go back to your community members and say, what would make this easier, or how can this, you know, it's letting them be co-designers in building the strategies. So yeah, you're definitely in a unique position because you're hearing all of it, and you might not have, you know, I think this is where you'll be able to give input and hear from folks on what organizations can do to change that.
There are so many initial steps we need to figure out how to take, because I honestly believe that many organizations don't understand or don't know how people feel when they leave their office. And that video that we're working on getting out into the network about authentic engagement and the tools that the community engagement team put together. I know, Amy, you can speak very well to this too, is that helping other organizations and their frontline employees identify what is positive and negative about ways you communicate with other people is it's one of the first things we need to be able to do is help organizations who have people that are on the front lines that work with the community members, help them see what it is to be nice.
So that, I mean, that's something actually that you can type on our Post-it note, our little virtual Post-it note, but is to share the community engagement video with organizations so that they have better interactions with individuals. You know, like that's a strategy that, you know, while the strategy is about really community engagement, that will help build trust as well.
Yeah.
Or authentic engagement, I should say.
Also, Jen, I can't help but think about maybe some previous conversations that you and I have had too. And so much of what you do is around trust. But is there also like a piece around, right? Because I feel like I'm trying, without being too specific, I'm trying to remember. It seemed like you had varied success and varied relationships with different organizations in the community based on the perceived value or what was being offered, et cetera. And so to me, like, is there a trust piece around relationships with other organizations? Like, I know that's like not, I don't know, when I think about trust, I think about, and like Amy said, like our system scan statement really talked about trust between providers and consumers or clients, whatever. But to me, it's all related, right? Too. So if there's a piece where like really your role is like and I think I remember you talking to me about like you're trying to like get in front of as many people as possible or whatever. And maybe there's a trust piece in there and like building trust between offices or providers, or maybe there's, and I actually, so my input to this board, even though I am not my partner, I'm a partner.
You're not authorized.
I put mine that I put scheduling meetings with partners to strengthen relationships, right? Because if Jen and I have never had a conversation, but I'm like, Jen, here's a good idea. She's going to be like, I don't know you, you don't know me, and whatever. So to me, there's a piece of like, okay, well, what steps have I put in place to strengthen our relationship so that we can build trust? Because I don't want to build a relationship just so you trust me. I actually value what you're doing. I really am interested in it. And I want you to trust me that I'm not going to swindle you for something, but that I actually have your best interest in mind also. Right. So to me, I feel like the trust can be at every level, right? So I don't know. I'm just like, as I'm thinking out loud and I'm listening to your conversation around, Amy's right, like your position is unique and the trusted advisors, what they do is unique, but also like when it comes to like the challenges of like well, and we have had challenges this past year, especially virtually. Like Amy and I trying to build and maintain relationships with partners has been very hard. And so like thinking about what can we do around trust and what steps could I take? And so just thinking out loud on like maybe some strategies you might have around building trust. I don't know, just talking out loud.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone else want to share about anything that they put on the board or kind of get into a little bit more specifics? We've got some great concepts on here.
Nicole, did you have any like strategies that you're working on or thoughts on the conversation?
Sorry, I was trying to finish this one.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were
That's okay.
typing. I was
That's
just trying
okay.
to have a conversation.
Yeah, so actually, I mean, I can just talk about like the one that I just was trying to figure out how to put into words. I agree. I'm not sure who said it, but it is kind of hard to put all that into a sticky note. It's hard to, boil it down to that. So I started writing to increase name recognition with the goal of, and I haven't finished it yet, but I will. To get more diversity among our providers, which is kind of also rolled into our agency. There are a lot of things that our agency does that people don't know about. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. Some of it has to do with that we've kind of worked with the same providers for ever and ever and ever and ever. And they're wonderful, but we also feel like it's to the betterment of, the entire agency and those we serve and the community if we can kind of diversify those provider relationships. So I'm talking about diversity in the true sense of word diversity, lots of different kinds of people, but then also we just want, more options for folks to choose from when they come to us for services. So that's kind of a really large thing. And there's obviously lots of different, smaller things that we're doing to try to achieve that overall goal. So some of the other things I've already put on here kind of speak to that. So like our further development of our DEI work plan and next steps, we're in the process of looking into a DEI consultant, which I think will help really advance our work in that area. And then also, so I put on agency-wide surveys and developing a mechanism for more thorough review of findings. We've really done a lot of work on making sure that all of our different departments kind of have a standard set of questions that we're asking everybody who kind of comes into contact with that program, what their thoughts are on the services they received. And so we've done really great job of developing that. We feel solid in our questions. I don't feel like we have a really great way yet of gathering that data and presenting it to key stakeholders. So that's one of the things that we're working on. And all of those things we think will help kind of that ultimate goal of, increasing our name recognition and bringing some more awareness to what it is we do.
Oh, that's great. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah,
I just wondering, because you led with the increased name recognition. So does that tie into like people don't know your agency or the services you offer, or is that why did you choose that one?
Sure. So it's kind of there's a few different answers to that, I suppose. So sometimes because we're kind of a behind the scenes in that there's an older adult receiving services in their home, they might know, the name of the person that comes into their home to help them take a bath, and they, might know the name of the company that person works for. But, we work behind the scenes in that we supply the supports coordination and also a lot of the funding for a lot of these things. So we're kind of a step removed. So sometimes people don't realize the services that they're receiving are actually, from our agency.
Great. Thanks for explaining. That makes total sense. And I feel like we talked about this too, probably last week in our services are difficult to navigate group, because, and I think Jen, you were there, we were talking about how so many of these are overlapped, right? And I feel like just you talking about, Nicole, as you're talking about like, the name recognition piece, and it almost sounds like there could be a piece in there, right? Like community members don't know about services, like, and how that overlaps. And like, maybe if we could like tackle this strategy here, it's going to tackle both trust and awareness and maybe stigma or whatever, you know, but I appreciate both of you like calling out the fact that like this is pretty hard to like put on a sticky note. And also it could be argued that so many of these things are addressing more than just like building trust. Like it's also about the name recognition piece, you know, like just when you think about the different 14 root causes and the different things that they, all these strategies, and again, how they're messy, but also like great because they're really getting to the root of things.
Yeah, and that's obviously in an ideal world, right? When we go through our action planning process, we start with the data, we disaggregate it, we think we try to get to a better understanding, which is a lot of where we're at now. Like we're getting, you know, you want, excuse me, you're putting out surveys, you're communicating with people, you're listening to people. So that's that really understanding what their true barriers are. Then when you build those strategies, we do want those, but powerful strategies will address multiple root causes. So you're going to, when you start to implement something in your organization, it hopefully will improve trust. It'll make, you know, better name recognition or awareness of your agency. It will make them understand what services you have, because people don't know about services, and it'll make the navigating the system a little bit easier. So when we're kind of getting in, and I think a lot of us are at the early stages of really just understanding the root causes, which is how you're going out into the community and you're listening to people and you're doing surveys. Once you get that feedback from community folks, you're going to want to bring them in to help co-design what that strategy looks like, and then make sure it hits a lot of these. It's messy, they overlap, but that's where the strength is in when you're putting strategies out in your organization. Any other ones that folks want to touch on or just expand on a little bit? They had other things that they put in here. So yeah, we talked, I mean, Sarah and I acknowledge this is hard. It's a sticky note. We started to try to bring this group around a whiteboard, but that got very messy when we were playing with it, because we were stamping over each other's things. So we tried to develop a way where you can write the actual strategy somewhere that is kind of in its own little box. Because I kept writing over Sarah's and stamping hers, and
It's true.
but we're gonna moving forward try to develop a way to write all of the strategies down. I think we'll be working, and we'll kind of get through this a little bit further in today, on how to like kind of hone in on those things and make sure that we're, you know, hearing community voices before initiating strategies, things like that. But we are going to develop a tool. I'm not sure if it's an Excel spreadsheet or an action planning, an action plan within our information network hub. So, but we're going to try to bring these together. So don't worry if these aren't perfect. After this meeting, we will reach out to you and invite you to kind of build that strategy a little bit stronger, and feel free to submit it in after the meeting. So this is awesome, getting some ideas out on the table and just finding out what's happening.
And like Amy said, this is such a great starting point, I guess, but like around gathering strategies, because in the future, right, as we have like different partners join, we're going to have like a spot for these. So, you know, as we gather those strategies and we say, excuse me, we know that Nicole owns the increased name recognition strategy. And so, and the people in the group will have this tool, this grid, whatever it is, and we can all talk about like, oh, you know, Nicole's working on this strategy. It's so similar to the one I'm working on. Like, how did you do this thing? There really is an intention to connect people around strategies, to really, not let people slide through if they're like, I'm just doing the strategy, but I'm not going to measure it. I just know it's going to be great. We're going to be like, all right, well, like, let's talk about that. So this is a great starting point. And as partners join, and as we know that schedules are hard and messy, that is, as people are able to join around trust and talking about it, that we'll have more strategies to add, and varied from different sectors and different perspectives. And hopefully with all a similar conversation, right? Because regardless of sector, we're all working on the same root cause. So I think this is great.
Right, any final thoughts on these or anything that people, and again, this isn't, you know, you will have plenty of time to submit things after as we move forward
And
too.
say, yeah, we usually leave this up. We can leave this up for like a week or so. So we'll send you an email and we'll leave the link. Or if you just want to like keep track of your strategies somewhere else, that's fine too. But no pressure to do everything in this moment. We will leave it up for a week or so before we change it.
Yeah, thoughts before we move on?
I feel like we could spend, I don't know, the majority of the rest of the time right here on this sticky board
I
talking
know.
about it, because I looked at Sherry's comment and I have so many thoughts on that too. And but no, you go ahead, let's move on.
No, actually,
I
this
missed-
is where we were hoping to spend
Oh,
most of our time.
I missed the comment. Oh, I was watching Amy's screen. Oh,
I wasn't sure how it would show up. So yeah, so I was just curious, and I don't know if this is the right time and we can hold that, because Jen, obviously I can connect with you afterwards. But I just wondered, as we talk about like transparent accountability, you know, is communicating that constructive feedback to organizations producing results, or you know, is there enough kind of like social pressure, I guess, that leads to change? And I was just curious more than anything.
I totally appreciate that. And I think there's a lot more work to be done around. Sarah, I appreciate your conversation so much about trust between other organizations, because the last thing we want to do is come across like, we know that you're not doing it right, and you may think you are, but you're not. And, you know, because there's an Oreo cookie effect to this. There are so many good things that are happening, and we can maybe sandwich a little bit of that constructive feedback between, you know, some other amazing things that are happening. But the reception of our feedback is not always welcome. So I would like for there to be more accountability. I would like for there to be better relationships, pathways to be able to give this feedback and information, and then be able to help. You know, maybe we can, being the trusted advisors, the boots on the ground, and coming from a different perspective, maybe we could offer suggestion. For United Way, it was a really relatively simple communication with a couple of individuals on expectations at that desk right there at the front door, and things really positively changed. Now, I don't work inside those four walls, and I don't know, you know what I mean? There could be other effects of that, but certainly from the outside perspective, it was significant. So those are other things.
Could you share that story a little bit? I hadn't heard it.
I'm sorry. A gentleman was needing assistance with utilities, and he approached Greg Hardrick, and Greg passed along. And it was, I think, one of the first years United Way was actually tackling that. In the past, it had been Community Action Agency, Department of Health and Human Services, and there are a number of forms that surround that assistance, unfortunately. So when he showed up on Greg's recommendation, he wasn't treated very kindly. And then they sent him away without getting anything accomplished. And he didn't know what his next step was, according to this gentleman. So when he went back to Greg and said, well, a lot of good that did. I still don't know what I need to do. I didn't have the right information. They didn't even know what it took me to get there today. You know what I mean? So Greg came to me and we talked through it. And then we sat down with a couple of people at United Way and talked through the experience that Greg had with this gentleman. They addressed some situations at the front office. And then, and I think within some of their, anyway, they addressed some situations in the front office. And this same gentleman came back to Greg 4 months later and said, I don't know what you said to that lady, but she was so helpful.
Which is amazing, because he was heard.
Yes, he was
and
heard.
probably he gave specific feedback to what would make it better for him, and that's the key to it, right? Having them say, if this is going to happen, I need A, B, and C, you know, and so.
So my question when you're talking about that too, Jen, so then like to that point, what happened at United Way that isn't happening at other places? Or what relationship do you have? Or like, what are the factors to me? Like, why was there a change there or perceived change, whatever, and not other places? And not that we have to like
Right.
get into all of it, but to me, it's like this piece around relationships, right? And like, and around accountability
huge.
or
Vulnerability.
yeah,
being
and we don't want to
open
think that
hearing
like
criticism.
right, we don't want to assume agencies don't care, because of course they care, right? But
Right.
like, what
Well,
makes your interaction with United Way or Greg's interaction or whatever, why was that different than others that maybe?
And I want finding ways to help identify those that are working within an organization that are best suited with their skills to be in front, because some people just aren't, and that's okay. And hopefully there's a place for them within that organization. But there are things that are difficult to teach when it comes to making eye contact and showing some empathy and some concern and care, and other strategies in that realm. But there are, quite honestly, it's simply how so many people in need of many of the resources in our community feel like they can't be seen. I mean, they're not, I'm searching for a word all of a sudden. Invisible. When the feedback comes to a trusted advisor, he has cussed her up one side and down the other because a resource she sent him to wasn't available that day, that time, that location. It's hard to say. But as soon as he did that and walked away and came back and she was still there, and she said, whenever you're ready to talk, I want to still try to help you. And she addressed him by his name. The first thing out of his mouth when he calmed down was, I can't remember the last time someone used my first name. So when I think there's the relationships and the building relationships and building trust and having one-on-one contact with someone who needs the additional time and help. So many of these things are, my case management is this, and I've got so many things I need to get this done by 20 minutes, and then I've got this and it's 4 o'clock, and I can't get any overtime because they don't allow that. And there are, so many of these things play into that, and there are a lot of things, a lot of pieces to knock down, and a lot of relationships to continue to build, and not only with community members, but with each other. I don't know that I answered a single question that you had in there, Sarah, but it's big, you know what I mean? So one comment and thought and strategy leads to another, like you were saying. You and Amy seem to bounce off each other a lot. So
no, I appreciate the answer. And I think it's true. It's just one of those things too, where when we're thinking about, and I know you and I've had conversations as well, but and a lot of times there are things that I don't know that, and not everyone knows too, but there are often history between organizations, or there are relationships or dynamics that oh, I didn't know that person. Oh, that's new information, right? But when you're thinking about, I love the story you shared about the success, right? We had success at United Way because they listened, they heard, they something, they implemented changes, which obviously means they had some sort of leadership buy-in.
Right.
And so then the question is oh, well, did you have a relationship with someone at United Way? Did Greg have, right? What was the chain of action, whatever that word is? What were the steps that happened to be successful? And why isn't that happening? Not to call you out, but why can't we replicate that, right? And so, and when you're thinking about, not that everything is about relationships, but everything is about relationships.
It is a lot about relationships.
Everything is about relationships, right? But and not to get too deep, I love this conversation, and I love how messy it is. And also just thinking about well, what could I do next? Or what made the United Way thing work? What made that, whatever definition of work is,
Yeah.
however successful, like, but why did that land in,
Well,
I
and
don't know,
that's
just things to think about. I don't know.
part of the process is building off each other's strengths and weaknesses. So when you have a like a bright spot or a success story, like to share and then to dig into that, like Sarah said, what was the catalyst for that? Was it the relationship? Was it the, whatever? But I think that will be part of this group moving forward, is that we'll find it successful. Actually look at like, why did that work? And what was the outcome? And then it made me think a minute ago too, Jen, you were talking about most of the folks in the field that are working have extended caseloads and need to leave at 4 o'clock and can't get overtime. That's part of what we want to look at. That's the strategy piece where it's, if we identify that calling someone by name builds trust and taking that minute to let that person settle and come back, then an organizational strategy should be or could be decreasing caseloads, increasing availability of overtime, like, really emphasizing the importance of that individual contact and the look in person in the name and or in the eye and that kind of thing. So those are the really deeper strategies that organizations can take to make sure that trust is built, right? So we hear these things, we know that they're being dismissed or they feel invisible, John, like you said earlier. And organizations need to take a really deep look to say, I can give this particular caseworker 30,000 cases, but if there's no trust, we're going to lose that credibility in the community. They're not going to come to the door. They're not going to seek us for help. So that's the kind of deeper institutional change that we're hoping to achieve.
I love that you mentioned that, Amy, because all the things that we're talking about are like things that, like, right, when Jen's example of this person that received help and like it was immediate and like they trusted and it was impactful, but also if we're not making changes at an agency that lightens, because if I don't have time to like take 20 minutes with each client, I need 5 minutes because I'm so overwhelmed. That is an agency issue, right? That is a system issue. And I love that Amy brought that up around like, can we change the policy then? Can something change that produces long-lasting things so that then my load is lightened, but then maybe the hiring practice is changed. Maybe like from now on, every caseworker is only going to get 20 cases to make sure, and everyone's going to have empathy training and everyone's going to do whatever, some diversity training, whatever. But like, so that we're setting people up and we create an institution and an agency that of caring. And really then we could get deep into also like that employees then also feel valued, right? And like want to stay and like want to provide good care. But I love that example.
The thoughts, any other?
It's so big. You guys are so smart.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I'm just gonna write that down real quick.
Yes.
It is so big.
Quote unquote.
Yeah, right. And really
No,
it's about bringing you guys together and like building off of like, what are you doing and how can we improve upon what you guys are doing, and support that.
and also like I always thanks for your comment, Jen, but also like we love these conversations. This is like I feel like we're better together and also always like build off each other, including you all, like thinking about this and like, Jen, I wouldn't have thought about this had you not suggested this thing, right? So when I say we value these conversations, it's really, it's true. Yeah, so we'll leave this link up, and if you think of more and people that were not able to attend that maybe are watching, we should do that. We should, hello everyone watching later. If you're watching this on Friday, welcome, but this link will be open. We'll leave it up for a week and people can enter thoughts. So there's no right or wrong answer. Sherry demonstrated great how you can add comments onto other things and really just help the conversation as we move forward and as we work together on how to make them stronger and really have these like thought-provoking thought-partnering conversations that we love. And as we continue to do that as we move forward.
Okay. we really want this to be conversational. We want this meeting to be driven by, let me stop share, by all of you folks, both of you folks. So we do have a few more slides that we can talk about that will hopefully just help us learn to build those strategies. Okay.
Nice transition. I know that's such a pain to go back and
I
forth
know,
between.
sorry about that. I'm trying
No,
to
you're did great.
get back to our screens. Go big. Okay. So we always revert back to our action planning process. Feel free to jump in, ask questions. But we're kind of, from today's conversation, looking like we're really analyzing data and identifying inequities and things like that. This is when we're building strategies and we've got an issue, engagement is always at the core. And then we kind of move through these steps as we're kind of thinking about what changes can we make in the community. You guys have all seen this cycle lots of times, so we won't spend too much time on it. But really, in thinking about your problems in the community, we really kind of wanted to talk a little bit about a couple of key questions.
Well, before you move on, I want to mention real quick the action planning process. And there is, again, we have a YouTube channel for the network that has some previously recorded learning convenings that Amy and I hosted around some of the different steps. But I know sometimes this is like overwhelming. Like the image is like, oh, I don't know, there's bubbles and arrows and what do I do where? But really the conversation we had today, right? Like as we're talking about something, we're like, well, how do you know that? We're like, well, why? And I even asked Nicole, like, well, tell me why you're doing this campaign around name. Because to me, that's an understand root cause, right? I want to know why this thing that you're doing, why you chose that. And like, maybe the answer is, I don't know, my boss told me to do it, or maybe the answer is like, actually, we've gathered data and we know that this is what best meets the community's needs. So these are the conversations that we will continue to have. And we don't usually like have this up while we have the conversation, but this is the framework that we use because we want to know why did you do a thing? How did you know? And then moving forward, like, and of course, Amy already said engagement at the core, but just to reflect a little bit.
No, and I love that. And I do think that when, we put this out there because so often we find organizations or folks working on addressing things, they put a problem statement out there and they make some assumptions about it and they're not listening to the right community members and they're not looking at targeted populations. So we're here to help facilitate that. So this is bringing it back to the problem statement. So individuals will come up, here's my strategy I'm going to implement in my organization to address this. And sometimes we're like, well, let's backpedal a little bit. Let's go back and think about, these are some key questions to think about before you throw that strategy out there. Like, I'm going to solve this problem by doing A, B, and C. And that's where we can help facilitate that. Like going back into these 4 key questions will help build a powerful strategy, will help make sure that you actually are addressing what you said you wanted to address without making assumptions, making sure you're hearing from folks in the community. So this is we'll go through this. If you got any questions or comments, feel free to jump in because we don't want to talk at you too much, but we thought this might be helpful moving forward. So that first step, before building that strategy, we say, oh, well, we're going to build trust by doing this. And it's backpedaling to say, what's the problem statement? Like we really want to start out with saying, people don't, say, moms aren't entering prenatal care at an appropriate time. Like that's making assumptions. That's not, you're not honing in on a target population. So we want to keep the statement on a population level outcome. And we want to know what are we seeing in the community. So rather than saying moms don't get into care at, in the first trimester, or people don't trust this organization because of this, like those are making assumptions. We don't really know, right? We want to go back and ask the right questions. And so then instead of saying moms aren't bothering to get into care in the first trimester, take out the assumptions, keep it at, make sure that you're honing in the right population and looking at what are we seeing, not what are we assuming. So you might make a statement like young Black moms are having higher rates of low birth weight babies or preterm babies. that is taking out assumptions, that's honing in on a population. So, and it's keeping, it's keeping it as to what we're seeing as symptoms versus like what's really going on. Any thoughts on that? Any questions on that? And in thinking about your strategies that we just talked about, are there things that you want to, are there ways that you want to pull out some assumptions that you might have made when you're building them?
And some of this too, we talked about, like, as we talk about strategies, whether they're fleshed out, maybe they're ideas, maybe they're not everything is set in stone or flushed out yet. But the idea is that looking at these steps will maybe help bring clarity, or maybe help hone in on a thing. Like Amy said, and I think we'll talk a little bit more about too, it's like maybe there needs to be a little bit more data collected. Maybe, oh yeah,
Sorry,
we're
I
gonna go
didn't
to
mean to
the clover leaf too.
The
But
clover leaf,
like,
yeah.
it's okay also if it feels a little muddy or murky. But these are some of the ways to bring clarity to, like, oh, like, to build a strong strategy. Like, well, why are we even doing this thing? Like, let's make sure we have a solid starting point so that we know how to build a strategy.
And this is kind of the intent of this. Like, we're going to bring strategies to the table and then kind of dig deeper into them. Like, how do you really know? How did you look at these different things? This is the clover leaf we call. This is from Able Change, but it is kind of getting into like, what do we need to learn about this? So folks don't trust my agency. Well, let's think about, first of all, is it what folks don't trust my agency? Who are, what is the, population area? And then getting into like, what is going, like, what are their beliefs? Is it just that they don't trust it, or are there deeper, issues? Is there historical context that it needs to be put in? Are there power questions and that they don't trust it because of power dynamics? We talked a little bit earlier about the United Way situation, and there was leadership buy-in. Like, is that going to be an issue for when I'm building this strategy? So these are a lot of, we won't get into too much, but these are a lot of the things that you can really dig into, like, what do we need to learn? So trust might, people don't trust my thing. Are there resources? Are there lack of knowledge? Are there policies that prevent them from trusting? Maybe their policy is that they only have 3 minutes per client and they can't really kind of build that relationship or listen to their actual barriers. That might be a policy within the organization. So this is, we don't want to get too much into the detail, but these are the type of resources that Sarah and I can provide and walk you through when you're building your strategies or when you're thinking about your problem.
And this also is a great place to be able to then decide what sort of strategy to implement, right? Because if by looking at this diagram, if it comes up that there's a policy in place that says every case manager must spend no more than 5 minutes with each client, and then I try and build a relationship as my strategy, it's not going to match, right? So the idea of this diagram is really to, like, pull out, why is this thing happening? Oh, is it a mindset thing, which is tough to change, right? But like, if it's a belief and value system, if I try and develop a strategy around changing a policy, that might not match. So really, this is really supposed to be like, oh, if I have a connection issue, in what ways are connections between organizations and residents contributing to the issue? Consider sharing of information, referrals, resources, and data. Does my strategy address the connection issue? So this is really, I know it's a little heavy on the words, but really I love this because it really brings to light, and it might be more than one thing. Maybe there is a belief system and also there is a regulation issue. But that way the strategy will match whatever is, whatever component this brings up. So this is mine. So we have, this is just from Able Change again.
Step 3.
This is step 3. So this is which perspectives and settings should we be engaging to understand the targeted problem. So just a way to make sure that you're gathering the right perspectives as you're thinking about the strategies that you're forming. So we have those experiencing the problem. We have residents, but that could be clients or patients. The people providing services, people that are supporting at the local level, like stakeholders, maybe people in faith-based organizations, people in neighborhood organizations, people delivering informal supports, and then the decision makers, right? So like the people who are deciding on changes and how resources are used, funders, local officials, leaders, government people. So like all of these perspectives, right, are going to have all of these categories. All of these people are going to have very different perspectives. And so the importance of gathering all of these things and all of these perspectives before moving on a strategy, right? I think we've talked about this before where like, if I'm sitting in a network and I have a great idea of how I'm going to engage parents, but I haven't like checked with parents, if I haven't checked with educators, if I haven't checked with teachers, if I like, it's not going to be a comprehensive or buy-in or probably the right thing because my perspective is so different. And so really making sure that if I'm going to develop a strategy that I have checked in with all of these different keep saying sectors, different categories as we, so that the data that's collected is diverse and comprehensive.
And I love that the diverse comprehensive, we've used the story about, you know, the elephant and the blind men and all that kind of thing. But I think it's super important because we keep talking about, you know, engage with those that are closest to the problem or find out what community members have to say. But we also do need to look at who's providing the services, what are barriers they're encountering? Because we might say, well, they're not giving enough time. And then we check with the frontline providers and they say, because I'm only allowed A, B, and C. So all perspectives are important. And it's really, that's where you kind of got to dig in before you build your strategy, find out what's actually going on in the community. What are we seeing?
And then here's a also another slide we've used before around our data pieces around different methods that we can use to collect the data. We have listed conversations. Maybe they're regularly scheduled meetings. Maybe they're small groups. Maybe they're interviews. Surveys are an easy way to collect data. Sometimes it's hard to collect qualitative data that way, but that's a way that many people have collected data. Observation, impact assessments, existing data sources. There are some examples there. But just different ways when thinking also too about from an equity lens, like, you know, it's very easy to create a survey monkey, you know, like it's kind of my favorite way to collect data, but also like, is the audience that's taking the survey monkey the audience you want to reach, right? Like if you want to collect a wide range or an equitable assessment, to be making sure that the way you're collecting the information is diverse and makes sense for what you're trying to do.
Yeah, in this regard, we want to do both and like, right. There are a lot of data sources that we have currently, but I love the immersion piece. Like show up, you know, if you're working with Black moms that live in the city, show up at the events and find out what they're experiencing and build those relationships, like those authentic relationships, but be present in areas and circumstances where they're present, because that's how you're really going to get kind of the best information. But right, so those are the 4 methods. So we're going to annotate one of our favorite things. We're going to bring you back into the discussion. If y'all remember to annotate, we're going to bring under the, I think, again, I
I
got to
think
change
it's
the slide.
options.
Okay, so on mine, it's different because as a presenter mode, it's a little bit different, but you go to options and then you find that annotate and then you find that stamp button. And we're going to talk about what you've used. And actually, let's kind of open up the floor and have a little conversation about not just stamping on what you've used, but what has been effective and what have you found to be beneficial in the work that you've done?
Actually, when you were just talking about the example of making sure, like in the example of surveys, making sure that you're giving them in whatever template actually works for the person you're trying to get the information from. So because we work with older adults and adults with disabilities, sometimes just putting everything online, that's not really the best way to go. And so we are currently finishing up a survey round for one of our programs, and we kind of try to offer it in every way that somebody might want to take it. So we have it in SurveyMonkey if somebody wants to do it, and that's kind of how we collect and figure out our data and our graphs and things afterwards. But then we also will print a PDF and mail it to the person, and then with a self-addressed stamped envelope, we will make it available for them at our office if they want to fill it out on site. We have also offered to go to someone's house so they could fill it out, and we'll take it back with us. They can also do it over the phone. So we've tried to really,
smart.
yeah, we've tried to really make sure that that's available to everybody. And that's been easier with some of those smaller groups that we've been targeting. But I know I've talked with Sherry about this previously in another group, but I am getting ready to put together our big every 3 years we have to do a community needs survey. So I'm getting ready to put that together. And so that's a lot of different people because we serve 3 counties. And so I'm kind of still trying to figure out the best way to do that for such a wide audience. We probably can't make phone calls to 1,000 people. But so some of those are some things that I think sometimes are difficult for agencies to sort through, and there's also a significant cost associated with some of those.
Yeah, no, I love that you said that, and I love that you've thought about that. Like we've run into folks and they're like, well, we're doing a survey for the homeless population. I'm like, well, I doubt that they have a computer to take the survey on, so I love that you've thought through the different ways you can do it, and in calling and doing it on computer and doing a paper one. And then you think through, like in that survey, if you've got like 2 or 3 key questions, like maybe even give those to your home healthcare workers that are out in the homes to ask verbally 1, 2, 3 while they're out, fixing, a meal or dropping a meal, or even utilizing other agencies, like building on those relationships that you have with other agencies that deal with elder care. Like, so that you're saying, hey, you've got home healthcare workers that reach, they're in the homes daily dropping off meals. Could you ask these 3 questions that we need to know about this? And then they can enter it into the SurveyMonkey so that the data collection remains consistent. But yeah, I love it. And the community health assessment sounds like it's going to be a project for you.
Yeah, it is. It's been it's kind of, since I've had this position for, I don't know, about 3 years now, this is kind of like the last big thing that I haven't kind of really made all the changes to that I want to make it just more functional and have the data be more readily available afterwards. So it's I'm hoping that the answer will kind of just come to me as I start working on it.
I love it.
I wonder if other people that have done large surveys, or I know like there are quite a few people, in the community. I know that like Residents in Action have helped with some data collection. I know Alexa is running our a different community needs assessment group. I would just wonder if as you're thinking, Nicole, of creative ways to collect data or challenges, I wonder if there are others, who have had similar barriers, or who have done it or have, I don't know, just thinking out loud.
Or if they've collected similar data. I mean, you might be able to pull from data that's already collected, those existing data sources on the bottom right of the piece.
Right. And so, Sarah, I think that's those are great ideas. I am actually on that group with Sherry and Alexa for that.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and it has been helpful because it's also it's not just the method by which we deliver the surveys, it's also the language that we use within it. And, for example, one of our target populations are caregivers. We have so many people, though, that do not identify as caregivers. They think, I take care of my mom because that's what I do. And so sometimes when we're trying to gather information on caregivers, for example, if we say, are you a caregiver? People probably don't fill out that section because they don't identify as that. So there's just a lot of,
yeah, words matter.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love that you brought that up too, because there's such a piece around definitions and what means what, right? And like, and just acknowledging that, like, okay, well, like if people are having confusion around this definition, do we like set the stage for them then? Like a caregiver, this is what we mean when we say caregiver. Like, are you taking care of someone or whatever steps you want to take? But I think that's interesting and important to just acknowledge, like, oh, we didn't realize we would have this barrier. So like, what do we do about that? You know?
Folks that have stamped or put arrows and things like that, what has in conversations, what has been, I think, what that you think is one of the more effective ones? I guess it depends on the targeted problem, but who has thoughts on what's worked and not worked?
And I know Jen might be on the phone. I'm not sure if she's able to. I just wanted to offer up if she wanted to pipe in verbally or not. But
I am. I'm so sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can see you too.
yeah,
Good.
So
Good.
don't,
Sorry
yeah,
about the sketchy connection.
it's all good. I appreciate you sticking with us.
The conversation you guys were having was so impactful. I mean, thinking about that survey and the number of people and how those people identify with their responsibilities and the different cultures and communities that you're trying to reach. And that just compounds the importance in my eyes of being able to have a relationship, a conversation, a one-on-one. So those interviews, those empathic interviews, the time and money that it takes to sit.
Oh, we lost you for a minute, Jen. Well, maybe she'll jump back in and we'll give her space at that point.
I can kind of jump in until Jen comes back.
Yeah.
We'd
We'd love to hear.
I think she's back.
Oh,
I am so sorry.
no, it's okay.
it's all right. Life.
I was just the importance of the interviews, the being present, the one-on-one communication, as well. You'll find the best information and get the best feedback. The interviews, yeah, empathic interviews, and yeah, just consideration for the conversation she was having around the that needs assessment that she was trying to build.
Yeah, Jen, I appreciate that. And I think that's, so we do have, we have kind of a second step in that assessment process where I do hold like some focus groups and public hearings and things like that. So that part does happen. But then of course it's the, I think the thing that everybody deals with, which is getting people there. So which is kind of why we try to have it be, very multimodal effort. So there's so many different ways that people could choose to engage, and then, and we have them at different times and in different locations, and all of that. So we try to make sure that it's really thorough. It's just trying to make sure that you learn everything you need to from the previous time that you've done it, and make sure that you put it put it out to the world in a way that's going to be able for people to be able to respond authentically.
Mm-hmm.
There's I love this conversation, and I think it's important, like both of you talked about this too, around really the ways to authentically, diversely, equitably gather this information. It's almost, I don't want to say it feels impossible, but it feels really impossible as like a person or as a thing, as like an entity or a strategy. And I feel like, and we've had in previous conversations and previous learning convenings or collaborative conversations, just this piece around like, can I tap into someone who is already doing this, or someone who, because really like, I can't help but think of a previous conversation we had, and I don't remember who it was. I don't know if you remember, Amy. Maybe it was someone from the library, but they were trying to distribute information about the library services, but they were not making good connections in certain parts of town, and they were not able to, like, they weren't reaching the people they wanted to reach. And Selena Taylor was on our call with Residents in Action, and she said, like, oh, I work with this part of the community. I'm in the community every day. I hand things out. If you would like me, to like spread a message, or if you want to connect with me, let me know. And so there was a piece in there too of like, oh, right. Like sometimes I'm like, duh, like, yes, people are actually already like in this population, or if they're already meeting, is there a relationship that I could build around highlighting or lifting up work that's already being done that like we can partner together piece. And so when I think about like Jen's comments around is there funding or time or things to like gather data, and as much as we love authentic relationships, maybe people that we could partner with already have authentic relationships, and like maybe some of the data could be collected that way, or I don't know, it's all kind of messy, but I just remember thinking of that like connection, and also what are different people doing in different pockets of town. What can we partner on to not duplicate work, and also like highlight the efforts they're doing as well.
It's a huge undertaking, Nicole. I think all of the strategies that you listed are tremendous. And if there's a way that the trusted advisors can help collect some of that for talk to people and collect some of that information and feedback, that would be very worthwhile. They spend a lot of time in Reed Manor and at the ARE and the drop-in centers, particularly a few individuals that have developed relationships there. But it's a huge undertaking, and all the strategies that you're using have got to really give you some valuable feedback.
I appreciate that. And I might, so that's one of the key, and we haven't kind of talked about this. I know we're running out of time, but that's kind of another one of the key areas that I'm hoping to kind of expand on this time around, which is, trying to find somebody else to help with some of the heavy lifting. So like you said, the trusted advisors, or, even just putting a stack of them at, I don't know, at Lifeways or something like that, where people can fill them out and then we can come back and collect them. I just think there's we've given people lots of different ways they can do it, but I don't know that we've really brought it to them in areas that are really easily accessible to them as much in the past as I think we could. So it's definitely one of the areas I'm focusing on. So Jen, you might get an email from me and saying, hey, could somebody take a stack of these?
That'll be great. We've worked with the library to help them find tutors and learners on adult literacy projects, because I think that they realize that we just had a different reach in the community, and it's been an awesome partnership, the health department and others. So yeah, please do, Nicole, reach out and we can see where our paths already cross.
I will do that. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, Nicole, you mentioned time, so we're going to move forward a little bit. Oh, I've got to clear the screen because it's like, what are all those stars? Okay. And also remember to hit the little red X where you brought the annotate out, because we'll keep stamping if we don't. So moving forward, as this group develops and as we increase participants, we do want to leave space toward in every meeting for wins and barriers. So a lot of the intent of gathering together is to talk about, and we did throughout today's meeting, but talk about like what has worked, what has not worked. And so we'll encourage you to be thinking about that as we're developing strategies and bringing stronger strategies to the group. We'll be reaching out and saying what's a win that's happened, how has oh, I've made progress on this strategy because I implemented this. Oh, I connected with Jen and now we've got these surveys in different parts of towns, whatever might that be. But be thinking moving forward on, I'm struggling with this, or I've accomplished this, kind of updates on the strategy work that you have moving forward. So be thinking about that for the next meeting. We do have a name piece, which we might be putting out a survey to the group and those that
yeah, maybe we should do a survey, especially, I mean, timing today, and maybe we ask a greater number of people what they think.
But we love that you guys have put input in there, and we appreciate your thoughts and creativity. So, but I think we'll probably put that out to get a little bit more active participation. So August 16th, come back and meet with us again at 10 a.m. Or no, is that wrong?
I mean, it says August.
Oh,
We should
that might
confirm
be
that.
18th. Right? Yeah,
Maybe it is.
August
Sorry,
18th.
I guess
That
I
is-
just wanted to look at the calendar before I.
No, August 18th, my bad. So August 18th at 10 a.m. Also, if you are going to be joining this trust group and you're going to, we can put a recurring calendar appointment on your calendar. So shoot us an email and say I'd like a recurring one. Some folks register individually, some folks just join with the Zoom link, which you're welcome to do both of those. But if you know that you're going to be consistently part or a staff person, shoot us an email and we'll put you on the recurring Zoom link, because it's at this point we're running the third Wednesday of the month. So, which is the 18th, not the 16th. I apologize. Good catch, Sarah. Upcoming events that we have going on, the July 15th one has passed, but we have action planning workshops that you're welcome to join. The next one is July 27th at 2 o'clock. And we also have Coffee Connections coming up on the 26th and August 24th. And those are spaces where we're going to be hanging out. And if you have questions, or if you want insight, or if you want to just talk about what's going on in the network, or ideas that you have, or directions that we can move, or ways that we can support, or if you just want to talk about the weather, you can come hang out with us. We'll be on just a live Zoom call, and you can pop in for 5 minutes and pop out, whatever works. We just want to.
And maybe in August, we've talked about it too, maybe actually having it at a coffee shop, and like how fun that would be.
That would be super
Want to
fun.
make sure, like, I know Jen, I
was
already knew
just
you were
gonna
gonna say that.
ask.
I know we're talking about it, right? And also, like, we want to make sure that like we feel comfortable with the meeting space, and you do. Like, I would love a nice morning sitting outside with a cup of coffee, chatting with you. Also, I think we should explore that option too for August. So anyway, we haven't made any decisions, but just that thought.
Sherry,
And,
you put something out to the entire network, didn't you? Are you
was
getting
gonna
good
say.
response? Good.
Yeah, we have a comfortability survey that
Mhm.
has gone out, and Tracy and Alexa, and they have done good work on like trying to put it out to all the partners. So we're hoping that by the end of the week, we'll have a lot of responses from people. And also separately, right? Like, we can also be in touch. Like, Jen, if you want to meet at a coffee shop and we both feel comfortable being outside, then we can do that too, kind of thing. So it's a messy time. Amy and I are big proponents of like just calling things out. And the truth is that this is a little bit messy right now. And like how we look in person, we're not sure yet. Like it feels a little weird, but we're doing it together and we'll figure it out together. And we want to make sure everyone is on the same page and has good expectations as we move forward. But like, also, I love the idea of a coffee shop morning. So, so yeah, and I think that's it. Is there anything else? Oh, we're over time. Sorry
No,
about that. It's
the
because we talked
survey-
about coffee shops.
We got a coffee talk. I
did.
put the link in the chat, so please take a minute, fill out the surveys so we can know how to best serve you guys moving forward. We appreciate your time. Thank you for coming today. Thank you for all your great insights.
Yeah, thanks for your engagement. We were a small group, but like this was a really valuable, and I hope that you all found value as well. And we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank
All
you.
right, take
Have a great
care.
day.